Welcome to another episode of AuditTalk. I'm Tom O'Reilly, Senior Director of Solutions Advisory Services here at Audit Board. And today we have a very special guest with us, Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Tom, thank you for having me. And let me also take this opportunity to thank Audit Board for the great support they provide the IIA. We really value our relationship with the firm.
Great, and we love the fact that we're a principal partner of the IIA as well, so thank you for bringing that up. So to start off today, I wanted to kind of talk to you about a lot of the messaging that you've been doing within the past 6 to 8 weeks. And specifically, you've spoken quite a bit about the immediate need for internal audit teams to adjust their audit plans in 2020 resulting from COVID-19. So I wanted to ask first if you can share some perspectives on the types of changes that you've been seeing in our industry, both from the topics and areas being audited by internal audit departments, as well as any type of change of the type of service that audit is providing to their organization.
Well, thanks, Tom. I would tell you that what we're seeing is really unprecedented. I've been in internal audit for 45 years, and I can't recall an era or a period anytime over the course of those years that I've been in this profession where I've seen so much change in such a short period of time. Not only in how we do our work, but also in where we're focused. And as you correctly point out, the pandemic and the twin crisis of the health aspect and the financial is having a profound effect on risks that organizations are facing. So internal audit, I think, is stepping up. We're seeing that across all industries and around the world, really stepping up in a lot of organizations to be that kind of immediate source of insight, of assurance, to give boards and management better confidence about how the company and the organization is positioned to address the crisis.
Perfect. And just a couple examples, like are there different topics and areas being, where you're seeing the audit teams focus on, or is it just wherever they're needed most by the organization?
Well, I think again, as I always say, effective internal audit departments know how to follow the risk, and so that risks are going to be somewhat subtly different from organization to organization. But there's a bucket of risks that we're seeing internal audit diving into to a greater extent than we have before. Certainly, health and safety is something that you wouldn't normally see internal audit involved in, but as organizations are facing the health and safety risks related to this, whether they're a customer-facing organization and they need to consider that aspect, or whether they're talking about the employees, internal audit has an opportunity to step up there and has been. Business continuity, I don't think we've ever seen a period where there was more disruption of business operations. So business continuity, supply chain just continues to be a challenge depending on the industry you're in. But I don't think there's any organization that doesn't have some risks related to supply chain. And then cyber and privacy, we're so much more dependent now on virtual operations that it opens up, or doesn't really open up, but it certainly expands the risks related to cybersecurity. And then what we're also seeing is internal audit getting pulled in more and more to what I call the cost reduction and containment reviews. This is more related to the financial part of this crisis, but it's something we've seen, or I've seen repeatedly over the course of my career. Whenever the economy turns swiftly and suddenly, internal audit is often asked to come in and help figure out where are there places that we can get better efficiency and effectiveness and reduce costs.
So now I want to ask you a little bit more, from those conversations that I've had and others at Audit Board have had, as we all know, there's a number of different types of tasks and responsibilities audit teams have, from helping their companies with Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, from helping facilitate ERM programs and the risk management program at the organization, other types of compliance activities, as well as the traditional assurance projects. In the past 68 weeks, from what we've heard at Audit Board, the first thing that seems to be put on pause or on the back burner is some of the work being done around the traditional assurance projects. And so I wanted to ask your opinion. Do you see this as just a short-term impact with the fact that organizations need internal audit to be all hands on deck to address these key areas? Or is this going to be a longer term impact on the type of work that internal audit performs for their organization?
No, I think the answer is probably somewhere in between. I think that we're likely to see some long-term impacts in terms of where internal audit coverage is, and certainly in how we do our work, and certainly if we think about the processes by which internal audit does its work. But I do think those areas I mentioned a few minutes ago, those COVID-related risks. We're not likely to see long-term emphasis by internal audit, for example, on health and safety risks, but we are likely to see long-term impacts on how internal audit undertakes its work. I would also say we're seeing some short and intermediate impacts on internal audit that typically accompany the kind of financial environment or the kind of economic environment we find ourselves. The IIA is publishing this week the latest of our quick polls, and the results are pretty revealing. 45% of internal audit departments indicate that their budgets will be reduced over the next 12 months. An additional of that, 86% say their travel budgets are going to be reduced. So that's virtually everybody is going to see some impact there. And what is even more troubling to me maybe is that more than a quarter of them say that they're going to be losing staff over these next 12 months. So you can't have that kind of an impact on internal audit and its budgets and not see that manifest itself in the extent to which we're able to provide certain audit coverage.
Yeah. So can we just dive into that a little bit deeper? I mean, I can't wait to see the poll when it comes out. I mean, what type of guidance do you give to these internal audit teams that may be suffering or experiencing a reduction in budget, whether it's through headcount or other types of budget spend? How can they still provide that same type of assurance that's expected of them with the same or less resources?
Well, I think that's actually the key, right? I mean, we're facing an expectation gap if we don't step up to meet the kind of thinking of boards and management about what value we can add. So we're at a point where there's an expectation going up of what we should be able to do for the organization. At the same time, our resources are going down. And that's where I think we have to really get much smarter about how we operate. This newest research, or this newest poll that we're publishing this week, has some pretty interesting insights about some of the changes in internal audit processes over the next 12 months. 80% expect that there are going to be more options to work from home for their staff, or work remotely, I should say. 73% are expecting to have much more flexible audit plans than they've had in the past, and 71% say they're going to decrease the amount of time that they spend auditing on site. So you can just sort of think about what those trends mean. I think it means that we can be more efficient. I'm not saying we can do the same level or provide the same level of assurance or coverage or advice with 25% fewer people. But if we are complementing, or if we're offsetting the reduction in the staffing, and by the way, I didn't mean that there's going to be 25% fewer internal auditors. I'm just saying 25% of organizations are going to be doing their work with fewer internal auditors. So if we're trying to do that, then we got to get smarter about how we do it if we expect to be able to continue to add value in organizations.
Yeah, no, that is great feedback and great insight. To add to that, or I guess to take that a step further, right? We wind up talking about technology now, right? So the technology is, for many internal audit departments, the foundation with which they carry out their operations, and it enables them to be successful. So in your perspective, having spoken to so many forward-thinking and contemporary audit teams, and especially those that are using purpose-built audit management solutions, how does that make them successful, and how can that continue to make them successful in 2020 in light of COVID-19?
I think we're likely to see a significant pivot toward more technology solutions. We've seen over the years that internal audit departments are incrementally incorporating more technology solutions, whether it's automated work papers that we saw starting to come in 20 years ago, or whether it's even in some organizations using robotics, process automation, so forth. What I would add is that any internal audit department that is still deploying 20th century processes is going to be in real trouble in being able to operate in this environment. You simply cannot. I wrote a blog recently just on the reporting process alone and how you've got to be more timely. We're operating in a very, very dynamic environment. The risks this week may not be the risks next week. And if you start auditing a risk this week and you're 6 weeks later and giving some feedback to management, they're probably going to have identified a solution and moved on. So if we're going to be relevant, we've got to be timely.
Yeah, that was a great article too. I liked your analogy of using shortening your audit reporting process to the fact that we're in the age of the tweets. So, and I just want to make sure it's not clear. You're not saying to start tweeting the audit reports. It's just using that as an analogy.
No, I was trying to point out that the people we're trying to serve are used to communicating in an entirely different manner, and delivering them a long and laborious and tedious audit report is probably not adding the value to them. And more importantly, the shelf life of information in an environment like we're operating right now is a fraction of what it might have traditionally been. And by the time we get the answer to them, that they will have moved on.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I just want to actually jump back real quick to that technology comment that you made. Without a doubt, we've been seeing at Audit Board as well. There's been a kind of a big increase in the interest of moving forward or continuing to enhance audit operations with the use of technology. And it's interesting because in internal audit's technology stack nowadays, there's a whole host of tools, whether it is robotics, data analytics, GRC technology or technology specific to audit management solutions. And what we're finding from our current customers and their maturation of using technology is that with using an audit management solution that is purpose-built to carry out the tasks from individual audit projects, from planning, fieldwork reporting, and issue follow-up, and then providing real-time status updates and insight to any one, multiple, or all audit projects, the successful implementation and use of those audit management solutions are actually kind of the gateway drug to being able to be successful or more successful for using data analytics and robotics process automation. So we're seeing that huge uptick in technology use as well. And I think that anyone in the 21st century is going to realize the importance that technology plays.
Tom, even before you get to the audit process, using technology in maintaining a continuous risk assessment is so critical. 53% of those who responded to our latest survey indicated that they're going to be increasing the frequency of risk assessments in the coming year. I think some could say, well, that's good news, but I would say maybe that's only the glass being half full. I would think everybody better be increasing the frequency of their risk assessments. And really, we shouldn't be talking about frequency. We should be talking about continuous. And some of the tools that you referred to a little earlier that are being offered, technology tools that are out there, do enable a more continuous examination of risks.
Yeah, absolutely. And through also increasing the frequency with which the solicitation of risk information can come back from risk owners as well. So let me end our conversation today on asking or having the opportunity to pick your brain one more time, right? As the father to so many internal audit departments across the world and providing them with sage advice, right? There's probably, unfortunately, more than a little number of internal audit teams that are right now just kind of sitting on the sidelines in their organization, not really playing the part that many other contemporary audit teams are doing to add value in this time of need. What type of advice would you have for that chief audit executive and her team to be able to say, hey, you know what, we need to change now? And what would be those first 2 or 3 steps that they could employ to start adding more value to their organization?
Well, it really has to start, Tom, with first of all, an aspiration to be a change agent in the organization. You know, we have people in our profession, some who are comfortable with counting change, others who are comfortable or who seek to aspire or to drive change in the organization. And if you're just comfortable waiting back until you're called upon, in all likelihood, the organization you serve isn't going to call you. You've really got to be proactive, and that starts with communication. You should be in there having regular dialogue with management, regular dialogue with the audit committee and the board about what is it that internal audit could be doing right now to give them some comfort, to give them some assurance or advice on how the organization can navigate this crisis. So first piece of advice is be proactive and communicate. And then I think what you do is you listen and you identify the risks that are of the greatest concern to management and the board. I know when I was a chief audit executive many years ago, I had a couple of cases where the organization suddenly was facing a crisis, and I had a challenge of getting the attention of leadership to say, hey, internal audit can help. And what I found would work more often than not is to really understand what is it that's keeping that person or that group of managers awake at night, and then diving in. That's how you really demonstrate your value. If you're auditing off of last year's plan, in all likelihood, no one really cares, but that's the problem. No one really cares.
Yeah, that is great advice. So definitely be more proactive, have a sense of a newfound ambition to take on more work, and then to open up the lines of communication and listen, right? Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. On behalf of almost everyone in the internal audit industry, it's just amazing and great to see all of the great resources and thought leadership coming from the IIA. Did you want to spend a little bit of time just telling us anything that's currently exists for internal auditors to help navigate through COVID-19 and/or any future resources that the IIA may have so that we can keep an eye on?
Well, we were quick out of the gate, I think, Tom. We recognized almost immediately that this was going to be an unprecedented era, and that internal auditors were going to need to band together, if you will, and progress through sharing has always been the IIA's motto. And so I think it's been our mission for the last 3 months, 4 months, to be out there sharing all the information we can get our hands on. We have a COVID-19 resource center that the IIA launched almost 3 months ago. It is continuously populated. Even this newest survey that I've just been citing statistics, it's already up. By the time this video is available, it will already be out there. So I would just encourage internal auditors to, obviously you have to stay focused on your organization and the risks that your organization is facing, but learn from others, benchmark, identify leading practices, and be out there and be a change driver in your own organization.
Great. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today during our audit talks, and good luck with the rest of the year.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.